Hello everyone. Today we'll be making a simple map system which will include a mini map and a world map. This video will be pretty simple. We'll finish the mini map and we'll design a bare bones world map. I'm planning to make another video expanding on the world map a little bit, and I'll talk about those features a little bit later. But for now, let's get started on making the mini map. So I have this project here. It's just a simple terrain. I downloaded this from the Unity Asset Store. I'll provide the link in the description. And it's pretty much just a simple third person movement sim. You're able to just move around this area here, glide with the trees, the rocks, all that stuff, interact with the terrain. And pretty much we'll have the mini map follow the player. We'll be able to see these hills here, these trees, and all that good stuff. So let's think about it for a sec. A mini map is basically just a bird's eye view of the terrain around the player. So that means there's a pretty simple way to make a mini map, and that would be by using a camera that's positioned above the player. So what we want to do is we want to create a camera here. We can rename this to Minimap camera. Let's reset the transform just to place it where the player is or wherever the player is placed in your world, and rotate it downwards by 90 degrees. Now, technically, we could say that this is enough, and we can move on to the next step. But there's still a couple more things we'd want to do. First would be to remove the audio listener, since the main camera already has an audio listener attached to it. Because if we run the program, then this will get an error regarding two audio listeners. So we'll want to remove the audio listener from here. Another thing is that we'll want to make the camera orthographic. This is more of a style choice, but if you take a look at this camera, if we move up here, you'll be able to see things in perspective. Now, if you don't mind that, then you don't have to worry about that. Otherwise, you can just make the camera orthographic and everything will be flat, just like this. Another thing to note is when you increase or decrease the height, the camera won't zoom in and out. It'll simply keep everything the same size. What will be affected, however, is if you go too low, then objects won't exactly render. So you may want to put the camera to be pretty high up, so it's above the entire map, just like so. So I'll set this to 50 in my case, just like that. And another thing with the orthographic camera is you're able to adjust the size here, meaning you're able to see more or less of the map, and you're able to customize that. And so that's why I'd recommend using an orthographic camera. And now that we have that set, we can start working on the script. So let's get started on making the script. So here, if you have a scripts folder, you can just go in and create a C# script. Let's call this minimap, and let's open it. All right, now that we've created the script, we'll want to think about what we want to implement in here. So let's go back to the project real quick and let's check this out. So when we run the project and we have this camera selected, we see that it doesn't follow the player, right? So that means we'll have to make the camera follow the player using the script. And so we can do that by getting the player position. So we could serialize field, game object, or rather transform player. Or rather than serialize field, you could also use public. Next, what you'll want to do is in update, you'll want to set the transform of the camera to match the transform of the player. The way you can do that is using transform.position equals player.position. However, we don't want the camera to be at the same height as the player. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to see the map. As I showed earlier, it'll clip through the trees. You might not even be able to see the player. So what we can do is we can create a new vector 3 and set the position based off of each coordinate. So we can take the player, get their position dot x, their position dot y, and the position dot z. Now one thing you'll want to change is rather than using player position dot y, you'll want to set it to the height that you set your camera at before. So in this case, I set it at 50. So you can simply set the set 50. Or you could create a custom variable here, and you can call it camera height. For now, I'll just set this to 50. Alright, so heading back into Unity, now what we want to do is put the script on the minimap camera. We'll set the player to the player, and you can set the camera height to whatever you want, whatever you set it in your project. And now let's give this a run. And now, as you can see, the camera's following the player, which is perfect. Now, what we need to do is we need to set up the camera to show up in the corner here or wherever you want the mini map to be placed. And there's a way you can show the content of this camera on screen here, and that's through creating a render texture, which is a UI element in Unity. So the way you can create a rendered texture is by going to create, and you should find it right here. And what you want to do here is you want to go to the minimap camera here, and you see where it says target texture? You'll want to put the render texture in here. And so what will happen is that this minimap camera will output what it sees to this render texture. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and get started on making the minimap view for the player. So in my case, I'll just simply put it by this left corner here. So we'll want to start by creating a canvas. And let's just set the canvas up. We may want to make it to scale with the screen size. I'll leave that as that is. And we'll want to start by adding a raw image. You can set this raw image however you want. You can set a shape for it. You can set the position. As I said, I'll leave the position over here. I'll scale it up. And in here, inside the raw image, there's an option to select a texture. In here, this is exactly where we'll want to put our render texture. Just like so. And now, if we play the game, we'll see that it showed up right here. And it'll work as if we have a second camera. That's pretty cool, right? It follows us around the map. Just like so. So now that we have this minimap set up, there's a couple things you can do. You can adjust the size of the camera here, so you'll be able to see more or less, however you'd like the camera to be. There's also the option to have the camera not show the terrain, but rather a custom map design that you made, like I've made here. But this I'll go over in another video, so be on the lookout for that in the next couple weeks. Now, what we can do is we can make a really simple world map, and we're going to use the same concept. Essentially, what we'll do is we'll create a camera that will look at the entire map from above. So essentially, the view will just basically be like this. Just like that. And it'll only be able to render the land here. So let's create a new camera object, and let's just call it world map camera. So here, we can set this to be located at the middle of the map, which it more or less is in this case. And let's raise the height up to be above. We'll also want to rotate this camera, just like so. Just to position however you need to. Just like so. And you can adjust the size after setting it to be orthographic. Let's say 150. Just like so. And you can create another rendered texture just for this camera here, which I will call world map camera. And here you'll just want to place this in the target texture. But you may have to adjust the view. After taking care of that, we can go into the canvas and we can create a new raw image. And in here, we can scale this up to be much larger and we can set its texture to be the world map texture. Just like so. So let's rename this here to world map view. Now, as you can see, this thing is just covering your screen. So what you may want to do is you'd want to be able to toggle this on and off at the press of a button, let's say M. So what we can do is we can go ahead and create a new script. And let's just call this script world view. And what you want to do is you'll want to put this world view script either on the canvas or if you have a separate input manager game object, then you can put it on the game manager object or input manager object. So let's go ahead and do that. And let's open Visual Studio. And so here, what we'll do is we'll have the input manager look for a user input to be able to toggle the map on and off. So first, what we'll want to do is we'll want to set the map. So let's call this world map view. Now in update, we can look for the user input. So if you do if input.get key down, and get key down will only read the button input on the frame that it was pressed, meaning if you hold it down, it won't do anything. You just have to press it. So we now do key code .m or however else you want to do the input. You could use get access, for example. Then what we'll want to do is toggle this to be active or not. Active. So we can toggle this by using an if-else statement here. If world map view dot is active. So then we can do that. Otherwise, else set it true. Now if we go back to Unity, we can set the world map view in the script to the world map view here in the canvas. And now when we play, you should be able to toggle it on and off. Perfect. And that's all for today's video. Just to summarize, we created a minimap using a camera that will follow the player, an orthographic camera. And we also created a world map also using an orthographic camera. This is a pretty bare bones map here, and I'm hoping to make another video where I can go over this more in depth and implement a feature where you can zoom in on the map, scroll around, and whatnot, the way you'd find in most games. And yeah, I'm also hoping to go over how you can make your own custom design for the minimap, and then have the minimap render that instead of the terrain directly, just like this image that I have here. But for now, we'll call it a day, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.